Why, hello. Oh, you are not allowed to have that background. You look like a floating bobblehead. You're also muted, honey. Unmute yourself.
I'm quarantining, I think.
Hi, Joe. How are
What's
you?
up, Suze?
My accountability buddy, and the two of you are Facebook friends.
Yeah, I know you, Jacob from
Elite Legacy.
Surprise.
And there's my best bud. That's Deborah down in Florida. You all know her. Matthew.
We know one or two people like that, I would think. Yes, we do.
Matthew's having trouble getting on.
We'll tell him to log in.
Yeah, well, he's having trouble with the link. It says that it's an invalid passcode.
Everyone else is getting in.
Right. Okay.
Tell him to try it from a different browser.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly everyone else is getting in. You sent out the link, so it's on him.
Yeah.
It happens every week, though. Oh my God, you would not.
All right, I'll be back in a minute. I need to help my kid. You guys can hang. Oh, Simona's coming on.
Just tell me.
Jacob, meet Simona. Simona, meet Jacob. Okay, I'm muting myself so I can deal with my son and help him get in.
Darling,
Hey,
just tell him to use
thing.
a different browser.
She's walking away.
No, just use a different browser. That's the fastest way to fix it. Hello, everybody. How are you?
What's up?
What's up?
Hi, nice to meet everyone.
Nice to, well, yeah, likewise. I'm trying to make sure that I've got everything going on Facebook because we are doing it to educate. So we're posting this on Trans Family Circle for the first time. So I want to make sure it's all streaming correctly. Child beyond gender. One mother overcame herself to be the mother. It's the Zoom link. Do you not have that one?
Between these two computers.
I'll send it to you again. 1 second. I'm just now going live on Facebook. So that will happen there. We're going to go over here to Zoom. It always happens 15,000 ways from another. So welcome, guys. I'm so glad you guys could make it tonight. This is one of my favorite things that I have started to do lately. It is getting people to change the conversation in a way we have not had before. It is to allow individuals the chance to ask questions and have serious conversations about actual issues that are happening in the world that are usually considered taboo, and they don't have to be. We've had discussions on suicide, on loss of a young spouse, on being a LGBTQ minority, and now we're going to have this conversation tonight on what it's like to be a family member of someone who is transgender. How does that influence your relationships, and how does one really start to comprehend and understand the difference behind too many things here behind what the difference between gender and sexuality is. It's on your WhatsApp. So I'm going to go ahead and start recording now. Oh, it looks like it's already recording. Well, that's convenient. So we're going to go ahead and get everybody started. I know there are a couple people ready to join, which is coming in here in just a second. So first of all, before I get everybody started, to allow for a few more people to come in, I want to discuss what it means to be transgender and what the difference between being transgender and sexuality might be. Before I do that, I want to get your insight as an audience on what you think that might be. Now, Susan, I'm holding off on you for a second because you're going to be the subject matter expert if I would. But if I could have someone else come and tell us what they think that it would mean.
Is the Trans Family Circle page, are you recording?
Yes, as I just said that a minute ago.
I didn't hear you, so
That's okay, I understand.
Okay, I'm done.
Yep, that's fine. You just be the guest, baby, and have a great time. Look at your nails. Let's see your nails. Let's see them. See?
Manicured.
See, it looks great. So now back to the flow of the show. If I could have, I did mine too. They need to be redone. I've got a wedding this week and I'll make them just glow and brighter. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get you guys to have this discussion with us. I'm going to ask Deborah, I'm going to ask Lucy, I'm going to ask Simona, Joe, Fern, and Matthew. Can you guys share with us what you believe the difference between being transgender is between being transgender and being sexual and sexuality? And don't all jump in at once now.
My bad, my bad.
Okay, I'll leave.
Oh, sorry.
Well, as a lesbian, I can tell you that my sexuality, I'm not defined by my sexuality. You know, I mean, I have a preference because I live and love my wife. But I mean, I don't want to throw out that I'm a lesbian and that encompasses who I am. You know, I'm a woman, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, you know, who happens to be in love with my wife. You know, when I was married to my husband, I was very much in love with my husband. You know, would I have said then that I'm straight? No, I just said I'm me, you know, and I've always thought of myself as bisexual anyway. But, you know, so I wouldn't want someone to label me because I think that limits who I am as a person, as Fern herself. So that's my take.
That was well said. And you also know where to vacation very well. I love the Outer Banks. Thank you for representing there, girl. And you're right. You're so much more than just one thing. I call it, I often use the analogy of being, it's one of many faces of a diamond, right? One of the things that makes the diamond sparkle is the fact that it's got so many faces to present the light, right? In case you can't tell, I'm very homosexual, even in my analogies. All right, who's next? Who wants to spin it? Who wants to come in here?
Yeah, I agree that labels don't do much good. For me, being transgender has nothing to do with your experiences or your availability to the care necessary to transition. I think it really just is inside of yourself. If you're somebody who does not feel comfortable with the gender of your birth, then you're transgender. It's that simple, you know. And at any point, even before I think a person notices it in their mind, if somebody could go their whole lives without ever realizing that they're transgender and wanted to be a different gender the whole time. But I think all it means to be transgender for me is just to
Yes.
comfortable with your gender and want to be another one. At that state at its simplest, I think anything else is just overcomplicating.
That was very well said. I mean, you must have had some experience with this. I'm like talking about it before. That was very well said. Actually, on that same note, my girlfriend Jessica, who just came into the room, hopefully she's not just, she might be around, she might not be around, I don't know, but she's got a great analogy of discussing what it might feel like to be trans as far as wearing, and she uses clothing as the analogy. Jessica, are you here? Is she able to hear us? Well, I love her analogy of how it's like you're put the shoes in the wrong foot. If you go for a walk and you have the left shoe on the right foot, well, then you can do it, but after a while it gets uncomfortable and you have to change your shoes. It just makes sense, right? I thought that was a very nice way of putting it together. That was her analogy, and I think it's brilliant. So let's continue. So Debbie, Deborah, hi honey, how are you doing down there in Boca or Lighthouse Point or whichever part you're in right now? You unmute yourself,
You're
sweetheart.
on mute, Deb.
Space bar.
Lighthouse Point.
That's okay, I won't hold it against you. I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
Where are
So
you?
what's your understanding?
Where are
I'm
you?
in Boynton right now.
Okay, that's not that far from Boca.
No, not at all.
Um, wow, I didn't know there was going to be a test. But transgender, I guess, I mean, we are the sex that we identify with or identify as being. And if that's not how you were born, then you're transgender. I think that's more or less what Matthew said. I agree with that. Sexuality is a whole different thing. That is who you're attracted to.
Right.
And that could be men, women. You could be a man or a woman, or both. Yeah.
Or somewhere in between. I believe that a lot of the times and I'll get to my interpretation of things after we bring Susan to the stage. But now that we have things rolling, we got some ideas moving here. Can someone please tell me, I'm gonna pull Christine up over here. How are you, my dear? Surprise. She's like, who, me? Yes, you, darling. So when you first heard of the term transgender, what did you associate? How did that resonate with you as a woman? Or as a person for that matter, let's be very clear.
So at the time, I worked for New York City government, Human Resources Administration, and I was working as part of the HIV/AIDS Services Administration. And I was being introduced to ideas that I had never thought about, and we were in the community, and I had a boss who was a white gay male, and he helped me understand and I don't think I had a chance to have fear because he was there. He was like, let me explain, who this group is, who this group belongs to, et cetera. And so I kind of had someone who was a part of the community that helped me to understand before I could get to the place of, fear or bias or whatever the thing. So he really helped me, and I was grateful for that because in our work we had a lot of interactions, and so I didn't have to look like a deer in the headlights because I didn't understand. So that's been my experience. So I have a level of comfortability because I was introduced in a loving, caring way to the idea.
That is such a great, you know what, and that's what you're mentioning is exposure, right? And feel like you're in a safe place to ask certain questions. And it's funny because when I was dancing, my former dance coach had me try out drag to see if I could get some of my feminine energies out and dance more like a dude. The funny thing is it worked. It worked very, very well. And unfortunately, my female side became very vocal. It's very amusing. But even I did not know and I was exposed to so many of my friends who were, then there is a difference between being a drag queen and being transgender, by the way. So we'll talk about that later as we go. It was like nodding, yes, and there is. So I was a very pretty drag queen and I had some very pretty transgender girlfriends. And even I did not know how to ask the questions appropriately. And I made some incredible faux pas. Oh my God, I made so many faux pas. And I'm not even going to go into right now because they're really, really embarrassing, but we will talk about them as the night goes on. So no one makes the same mistakes twice, okay? Because make your own mistakes, but it's gonna be much more interesting that way. But let's go ahead. I know that Simona, hello, how are you, Simona?
Hi everyone, good. I'm very happy to be here and to be introduced to this amazing community. Thank you, Susan, for inviting me. So I'm a big advocate and leader in the LGBTQ community. I'm advocating as a mother of a gay son, and I'm on a mission to change the future for my son by breaking all the binary rules. So therefore, I do a lot of work in mainly educating parents how to support their LGBTQ children. And sometimes I work with preteens and teens when they don't know who they are and what they are. So this is how I teach it. Sex is between your legs. Gender is between your ears. And they don't need to be the same thing at all the time. So then when the journey of self-discovery is starting, when those two do not align based on binary rules again.
You said that very well. And I love how you talked about gender. You know, it's also interesting as I am a gender fluid individual. That's mostly because I don't like committing to one thing longer than a scoop of ice cream. Personally, it's like,
yes.
Even then you got 31 flavors. I want them all. And sometimes I want them all mixed up and that's fine by me. So, call me he, she, them, whatever you'd like. And actually, usually, if anybody feels so inclined, you may put your preferred pronouns in your name here in the room so that we know which one to call you. I actually usually make that a practice in my calls. I just, for some reason, I'm all nice. I didn't enforce that tonight. That's kind of funny. I mean, okay, shame on me, but whatever.
But can't we just don't even need them? Like just break all the labels? You know?
I mean, if everyone's cool to be called, Lassie, we're good with it. Yeah, I'm fine with it. Just have fun. No one gets sensitive. Have a good time. I agree with that. I love that, Simona. So you're how old is your child?
He's gonna be 18 in 2 months,
Congratulations.
going on 40.
Well, we do have to grow up a little bit faster. And there's a fantastic book. I do recommend if everybody gets a chance to read it. It's called The Velvet Rage. And if you've not heard of Velvet Rage, it's a fantastic novel about a gay man's experience living in America. Now, it's specific to gay men, not lesbians, not transgender individuals, but it does give insight on the shame that is very common, the foundation of outsider's perspective when you do not follow the binary norm. So I highly recommend it. It's a fascinating read. And someone who is going to tell us more about their experience on the outside is going to be our guest tonight. Susan is one of my favorite human beings who has got so much to share and a gigantic heart. She went through a journey herself that she's going to share with us tonight. And we're also lucky to have her family here to support her as she shares her mission. You see, the story about personal growth is not one that is beautiful. In fact, it's not one that's easy, and sometimes it's just damn ugly and embarrassing. And I want to commend her in advance for her bravery, for being here tonight, and being so honest and vulnerable with us. I've learned so much from her already, and I can't wait for you guys to learn from her as well. So without further ado, can we all please just give a round of applause for Susan as she comes to the stage. Hello, Susan. How are you, my dear?
Here she comes in her little dress. Marisol, I love your haircut. That's what I was trying to tell you on the founders last week, and I was yelling at you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Hi.
Hello, Susan. So why don't you tell us about Trans Family Circle? Why did you decide to start this group?
Wow, because there are too many transgender people who are struggling alone, who don't have the support of their families, of their birth families. And, you know, many transgender people are rejected by their families. So Trans Family Circle is an idea that I thought, you know, I'm a very nurturing person. I'm a warm person. I embrace people. It's what I do, and I'm, you know, constantly, you know, talking my my thoughts and my feelings, and drawing people out. I like to do that. I like to make people feel included. And Trans Family Circle is a place where other families of transgender people can go and meet people like them. So maybe we can help them through their struggle. It's very shocking in the beginning. It's really hard. The transgender person, you know, your loved one is expecting unconditional love, which is not unreasonable. I mean, this is my daughter. I love her unconditionally. And, you know, she expected that I would just, oh yeah, no big deal. Okay, whatever name you want. Sure, no problem. It didn't work like that. Didn't happen like that. And the fact is, it doesn't happen like that for most transgender people. I'd say, from my understanding, most transgender people, if they're not out and out rejected or thrown out or threatened, certainly they're shunned and shamed. So the families, sometimes it's just a matter of time and a matter of talking with other people and understanding that whatever it is you're feeling as the family member, you know, you have a right to your feelings too. And there is another side. You can come out on the other side, because the fact is that these are our family members. This is my child. I gave birth to her. I really wanted her. All of my life, I waited for her, you know. So to reject her,
It's okay.
listen, folks, I can't promise you're not going to see me crying tonight, okay? So I want to help other families cope. I want to give them hope that there is another side that you can come out on, and have a place where families can form a group, talk with each other, support each other, and so on. There are a few really good organizations out there that already do this, like PFLAG, for example. Spelled literally P flag. And they're all over the country. But they're big, they're impersonal, they're scary. So that's why I did it. Yeah, that's it.
It's not easy. What you just said was there's so many things I want to address in here. So I'm going to ask everyone to please bear with me while I try to find the correct words to ask, because it's not something that you are innately familiar with. But what Susan was just starting to describe was a very personal experience of how she had to understand that her daughter was transgender. Now, this is the thing, I'm not a parent. I run a nonprofit helping LGBTQ young adults who were kicked out for coming out. And I see a lot of things that go on within their heads as youth. And from my own personal experience, I understand a lot as well. But the parents I do speak to, they feel so guilty. Usually at first, there's a lot of guilt from when they understand that their child is either gay, lesbian, transgender, or some other non-conforming identity. And I want to first let everyone know that it's okay to grieve. When you come through and you understand that your child is of a different persuasion than you dreamed, that you sacrificed for, that you planned for, that you've been trying to prepare them for, to live a happy adult life, giving them all the skills that they might need, that you're capable of providing, to find out that you were not able to actually prepare them all along makes you feel guilty. And that is something that we don't discuss all that often. And so I'd like to discuss that now with you, Susan, if I may. When your daughter told you that she thought that she wanted to go by a different name and that she felt that she was in a different body, how did that conversation play out?
Oh my God. I
Ooh,
wish it were.
everyone get your wine.
It wasn't a conversation. That was part of the issue. It was, Mom, Mom, she and I are both pretty hyper type A, loud, in your face, temperamental type people.
One of your best features.
Well, when it appears in the form of passion, yes. But there's a way to learn to talk to other people. And she and I have, through this experience, this has been the biggest test of whether or not it's worth learning how to talk to each other. So when she first came out, she was 22. And she had been flirting in a character from a video game. She was in clothing. It was Halloween, and she was in clothing for this female character for Halloween. The problem is she didn't take it off for days. And, I said to her, she came home and, you could tell she had been in those clothes, and I mean, honey, when are you going to take those clothes off? I mean, you've been in them for days. You look crazy. You look ridiculous. And that's when she told me, but it was a bomb she dropped. And because I was so confrontational when I said it to her, naturally her response was just to push back. So that was problem number one. And it just escalated from there. So I was terrified. I did not know how to react. I didn't want to hear what she was saying. I mean, literally, I started shaking. And Jacob, how deeply do you want me to get into this?
As deeply as you are comfortable.
Okay.
No
well,
further.
okay. At the time, it was a very, very bad time in my life. My family was breaking apart. My husband and I had separated. I didn't know where that was going. I was on very shaky ground. I was trying to figure myself out. He and I worked together we built a business together, and so we were just, everything was all in the same place. And so everything was breaking and splintering. And this is when my child came to me and said, "You can't refer to me by that name anymore. That's my dead name. And we're burying that person." And I just, I flipped out. I mean, these are the things she said to me, pretty much. And at a time when I was not capable of any more loss. You mentioned, Jacob, that, parents feel guilty. The guilt that I felt was not because my daughter had this issue, because naturally I made it all about me. That's what we have a tendency to do. And that's the lesson, by the way, in all of this. And we'll circle back around to that in just a minute. My guilt was because I was pushing back against something that I knew, and I kind of knew it. Her father and I always thought, we had a gay boy. We didn't have the sensibilities, the difference between your sexuality and your gender identity. That's, we didn't have that language. So it wasn't such a shock to me, quite frankly, because she was, as a boy, there were times she was very effeminate, and I had a hard time with it. We were in a very conservative world and trying to build ourselves as successful people and, among very conservative people. And, it really rocked me and scared the bejesus out of me. And I was not, at that time in my life, I was not capable of hearing what she was telling me. So I handled it poorly.
Do you feel that going through that relationship, that experience together, understanding you both have that same fiery attitude, because I can already see that you see a lot of yourself in her. Were there any signs before she told you that she felt that she was trans? Were there any indications in hindsight?
I said to her, once I was over on the other side of all of this, and we started to rebuild, that took about a year. I said to her, one of the first things I said was, honey, this makes so much sense. I mean, really, think about it. I see her father's laughing also. Manny, he's on the call with us. That's her dad. We're very proud parents. We have some incredible kids. They're great kids. Yeah, many, but only in hindsight, because no, I didn't see it coming.
So, because you thought you had a gay son.
Yes.
And were you, and Manny, I'm going to ask you as well, were you guys accepting of having a gay son? Had you guys come to
No,
process
that's what I'm
that?
saying. We had a hard time with that because, I have a lot of gay members in my family, and I've seen a lot of struggle in my family, and we just didn't want that for our kids. And, we wanted the idyllic, stress-free or less stress, let me put it that way. We didn't really have the wherewithal to understand all of that. Jacob, our business was all consuming, and our kids, both of them, were handfuls. I was a working mom, and there was just so much responsibility all the time. I'm not making excuses. I don't mean to sound as though I'm making excuses. I'm just explaining what my perspective was, because quite frankly, there is no excuse for how poorly I reacted in the beginning, and that it took me so long to wake up and say, what am I doing? Wait a minute. This is my kid. If there's anyone who she needs to help her get through this, it's her mother. you know, and she and I were always very close growing up. I mean, we had a tempestuous relationship, but that's because temperamentally, you know, we're both very light. So we would, you know, but it was always pretty quick, you know, kiss and make up and, you know, whatever. And both of my kids know that I'm a very devoted, loving mother. And that was never in question. You know, I would never leave them or not care for them. But this was, especially, as I said, at that time, I was already faced with so much loss that I wasn't capable of also losing my son, my firstborn son. Oh my God, I couldn't fathom it. And the problem was that she didn't have the language to understand that I just needed time. And I said this to her a number of times, you know, I'm mourning my son. You're asking me to bury my child. Mom, it's still me. I'm still here, Mom. I'm alive. Look at me. You know, hear my voice, feel my hug. Oh, it was so painful. And, you know, it just took me time. And then love trumped. Love trumps all, you know. Like I said, just one day I realized that I was done putting me first. You know, that's what happened. Like one day I just remembered, oh, wait a minute, this is not about me. Because to her credit, the entire time that we were struggling, fighting, honestly, there was a lot of fighting. During that entire time, she kept trying to educate me. And, you know, she's just like her mama. She doesn't give up. You know, we don't give up. You know, any one of you who know me here knows that that's what I'm about. You know, I never quit. And so she just kept at it. And eventually I calmed down and enough time had passed. I went to a PFLAG meeting. I only went to one. I only needed one. I had a good long cry as I heard all those people talk about, how am I going to bring my sister brother to my wedding, and all of the family, they're going to be so ashamed. And, and you know, and I sat there and I had my good cry and I talked about my loss, but in looking at all of these people and what they were concerned about, I said, oh my God, that's what I sound like. I said, oh honey, I'm so sorry. I forgot that this is about her. And she told me, but I wasn't listening. And so I got to the point where I was able to begin to change that narrative. You know, I was past utter confusion. I was past shame. I was past fear. And during this whole time, you know, we were fighting. And I told her she had to leave because I couldn't take it anymore. And I had another child at home. You know, I had someone else to care for. Not that he was a little child, but, you know, he was a teen in high school, but that's irrelevant. You know, I had somebody else to care for. And that poor kid is listening to all of this terribleness going on, and we're living in this. And she had so much trouble working. She wouldn't work. She was depressed. She was anxious. She didn't want to do anything. She was, you know, dirty. She was lazy. She, you know, and it just wasn't my vision of her becoming a woman or an adult, you know. And so it just was so incongruous. And during this year, as we're trying to find our way through it, you know, I told her she had to leave, and she said, well, where do you want me to go? I said, you have tons of friends. Okay, sleep on their couches. You know, they have extra, you know, go. She had a car, just go. And she wound up sleeping in her car on occasion, which she always reminds me of, that she was homeless. And you know what? I mean, I felt like crap. I felt really guilty, but I really believe that everything happens for a reason and in its time. And she needed to go through those experiences too, because the fact of the matter is, as bad as it was, as bad as I was in not being the supportive, loving, open, generous mother that I would have preferred to have been, she was pretty crappy too. Okay. She was on hormones. And I mean, excuse me, folks, but she's 22 years old and she's past puberty, but now she's going through
All over
PMS.
again.
Okay. It's like every single day living with that, and it was rough. It was rough. And she didn't know how to dress. And she didn't know how to act and hold herself and conduct herself. And I'm like, Stunyata, the only way she's going to learn is from you. Hello. And I started to get it. So all that distrust that we had spent the year building, I now had to break past. And it took about another year for her to be okay and lean in and accept the fact that I was genuine. She said to me, you can't blame me. I mean, you put me out once. You can't blame me. I'm a little fearful. And I just kept hugging her and telling her how beautiful she was and how much I loved her and how sorry I was. And please forgive me. Please forgive me. And she did. Eventually she did. And now, we're good. We're good.
Ah. So there is a 6 out of 10 transgender individuals find themselves homeless at least once in their life. And I believe the statistic is 8 out of 10 have found themselves wrongfully terminated because of their identity. And those are very sad statistics. And Susan, I commend you for sharing that, because I know that is something that my mother is not proud of when she rejected me. And I want to commend your daughter for the fact that she was consistent and she kept trying to educate you. I also want you to give yourself some credit, some very much deserved credit on the fact that you were able to stay receptive, even though it was so challenging. When you were finally able to open up, you stayed that way. And that is very hard, because you're having to rewire so many of your own foundational beliefs for the sake of your child. And that is something I want to give you so much credit for.
Thanks, Jacob. When you have kids, you have to surrender to them. You have to put them first. You have to put, to be a good parent. It doesn't mean you lose yourself and you're no longer yourself. That's not what I'm saying. Like marriage, when you get married, you have to surrender to the marriage, in order to lean into it and really give it everything it deserves. That's what I'm talking about.
You said your son is here with us in this call, correct?
He is.
Would you like to introduce him?
Mr. Matthew, where are you, love?
Which
Unmute
one?
Hello.
There are multiple apparently showing up right now.
yourself.
When she solidarity, man.
You could pretty much say Matt, Mike, Dawn, Chris, guess one of those names, and 9 out of 10 times you're right if you're talking to somebody. But
That's very, very telling. So welcome, Matt. So how old were you when all this was transpiring in your household?
Mom mentioned I was in high school. Yeah, maybe like 16, 17, something.
Ashley was 22 when she came out, Matt. So
Yes,
you were
about 18.
So what was that like? So those are very formative years for yourself. Granted, you were still coming out of puberty. You're in high school. Everyone's talking about going to prom and when they're going to high school football games and whatever else people talk about. I was definitely not one of them. I was always in the theater, go figure. What was it like for you? Because there's clearly a lot of unrest in your home environment. This is all going on. How do you feel that affected you?
I mean, you know, it destroyed me to, I mean, my sister is my best friend. She always has been. And to see her go through that and the toll that it was taking on her, it tore me apart. Um, as far as how I dealt with her transition, I come from a generation that made it a lot easier for me to be supportive of her and embrace. Uh, and I'm very grateful for that. That she told me a few times how grateful she's been for the way I embraced her. But you know, Ma talked about making it all about herself. To a degree, I believe that I did that and continue to do that because, you know, as an ally, when she transitioned, of course, I was very happy for her and so proud of her for the bravery it took and continued to take to be her true self. Um, but a part of that I made about me because in the deep down in a corner of myself that I didn't want to admit to myself and that let alone admit to anybody else, I was grateful because I was like, oh great, now I get to show everybody how good of an ally I am. You know, like I get to the woke guy with a trans sister, and that is not being an ally at all. You know, like she's like my mother, wonderful mother said, you know, it wasn't about me. It is not about me. It is about her. And for me to think that it somehow makes me that to be grateful that it makes me more likable, that I can be a good brother to my trans sister, is not in any way being a good brother to my trans sister. So I think uh, you know, mom mentioned you mentioned those horrific statistics, and I really believe that uh, the consequences of ignorance, confusion, fear, hatred, all of that. I mean, they can be as severe as death. And uh, you know, I think if for anybody to want to uh, really help as much as they can and save lives that could potentially be lost, suicide, crimes, and like look at what's going on with the Asian hate crimes right now. It's ignorance absolutely has a high price, and I think the only way to combat that is for each of us continually look in the dark crevices of our real and educate ourselves as possible, and always be open to adapting to change and accepting what we may not yet understand. And so I try my best. I think for me to be a good ally is just for me to continually be as hard on myself as I can to continue growing. Because there's no such thing as a perfect ally, because there's no such thing as a perfect person. So that means I can always be better. It doesn't matter how much I love my sister, how much I think I'm doing for her. I can always be better. And I think it's essential that I keep pushing myself to continue getting better for the sake of their lives and for the sake of my life, you know, for me to be able to sleep at night.
So I'm looking at your body language. I know your mother, who by the way is one of my favorite human beings, and she and I like we get along really well. But she was so nervous for this call. I was like, okay, girl, we got you. I promise I'll be nice. I want to make sure Matthew speaks too. It's gonna be fine. But I'm looking at your body language and I'm seeing knowing where she comes from, because Susan, you definitely don't come from a high level background. You came from a mother who worked her assets off to provide for your family. You saw the benefit of someone who gave your mother the opportunity to rent or own their house, and how it changed your entire family's trajectory. You've got such an amazing story behind you, even beyond this. But I'm looking at Matthew's body language, and I can see that Matthew, you have a very strong masculine presence as it is. I can imagine that growing up with your brother being your best friend, and to a certain age, that probably that's probably your role model at some point. And am I succinct in that? Is that accurate? You're
Yeah,
what, 5 years age?
was my role model for a time, even before she transitioned. I mean, my mother will tell you how when we were little, I copied every little thing she did, you know.
That's what I'm okay. So that's part of it. Good. So that's what I was trying to get for. So you covered everything that that she did at that point. So, and then Susan, this is something that I find very funny. Like you just mentioned that, you know, your daughter did not know how to be feminine. When she didn't know how to dress, she didn't know how to act like a lady. And that was something. How was that? Like, what was that moment like when you finally said, okay, fine, I'm going to accept my child. Oh crap, can you please sit with your legs closed? I mean, was there like a moment like that where you just started laughing at these like little things you don't think to teach your child, and now suddenly
There were many moments and we didn't agree and we still don't. Let's just leave it at that.
Mhm. That's fair enough. That's a very fair statement, because everyone can be their own individual, which is something I find so
Yeah.
beautiful about being human.
I'm much more conservative. I come from, old school. I'm a very old soul. I was always a very old soul as a child.
You're also one of the most observant, and you're very empathetic.
I was the one who always came to the rescue of the kids being bullied. I myself was bullied a great deal and ostracized. And I was always sympathetic because I was empathetic to the other kids who had trouble in school or wherever. And those were always the kids that I gravitated toward. So, I know what it's like to be on the outside looking in.
It's
That's how I
interesting.
grew up. I never
so many-
felt included. And just in this, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
You're
but
fine.
I'm having an epiphany here.
Go for it.
Like, wow, I can see that was one of the factors for my having been so vehemently against her changing morphing into something different, because I wanted her to be in her inclusive world. That's how I was trying to protect her. But I didn't understand that that was the wrong kind of protection for her. And the parents, we can only do the best we have with what we're given, and if our intent is good, and we manage to communicate, then we're doing better than most. And if nothing else, we always tried. We just didn't succeed enough, but at least we tried, and we never quit trying. There was something I really want to circle back to, if I can, because it's very important. When you asked me about why I started Trans Family Circle, that's already old news already, but I want to relate this one story. My daughter had gender reassignment surgery. She had a vaginoplasty, and that was the end of 2018. And I want to relate this one story. Whoops. Yeah. Okay, I'm good to go. So she was recovering at my home. And a couple of days after the surgery, she was having some real problems with the surgical packing. And we wound up at the emergency room. One of her surgeons met us there, and, he did what he needed to do and took care of her. And then she went into the restroom and, started cleaning herself up and getting ready to leave. So I'm standing there with the surgeon, Dr. Pang. If you're listening, Dr. Pang, a lot of people will owe their lives to you, by the way, because you're the reason I did this. He said to me, we were having a conversation about, transgenderism, and we were there with Ashley's girlfriends and the whole posse. We went together, and I was asking him why did he choose to do this? And he said, well, because of the need. And then he said to me, why are you here? I said, what? He said, we don't see a lot of parents here, Susan. I said, what? What do you mean you don't see parents? And it dawned on me, and I looked at my daughter's girlfriends, and I knew you know, they don't have the support that she has. They all called me mom. Why? Because they couldn't go to their own mothers. They all rejected them. And that's just wrong. That's wrong. Everybody has a right to be their best selves. And if they're not hurting you, then let them. And I said I was going to circle back to the part about it not being about me. That's the problem in these conversations. The problem is that when we communicate, we tend not to listen. We think we're hearing, but we tend not to really listen. It's not about us. Put yourself about being transgender, being gay, being black, being white, being tall, being short, whatever. You know, a person is coming from their perspective. You don't have to own it. I didn't have to own it. My life is my life. Her life is her life. She's entitled to her life, as is everyone. And if you're not hurting me and you're not hurting anyone else, be it far from me to stand in your way. And that's the sort of stuff that I started to realize during that year. My sister is an activist, and I would not have gotten through that year without my sister. That's Fern.
Fern's your sister?
Yes.
Oh my God, this makes so much sense now. I knew I liked you. Yeah, I was like, they look alike. They really do. I was like, well, they're sisters. It makes sense now. I get it.
And
So Fern, you were clearly a support for Susan as she was going through this. What were there moments where you just wanted to just give her a hug, followed by moments you just want to smack her, or sometimes a mixture of both? Like she's just nodding at this point.
You're muted. Susan was very supportive when I came out the first time as a teenager, and she was young. And my family, two of my three siblings supported me, and one brother had a hard time with it. But Susan was always my advocate, and it never occurs to me not to be hers. So that's our relationship. If you want to ask about me and Ashley, I thought it was my role to support my niece, because as hard as it was for me to call her a she, like just roll it off my tongue, I was constantly using the dead name, and not because I wanted to, just because I'd forget, because I loved that person so dearly, and that person was so much a part of my psyche that it didn't occur to me that this new person had a new name. But I supported Susan for the her ability to be to get through it, because she from the beginning wanted to know how to make it better. I mean, after the anger, she was never angry at me because I wasn't angry, because I grew up with drag queens and doing hair and making wigs and Shantae, you know, I grew up going to gay bars, and it was no big deal. And I didn't like the way Ashley dressed. I'm not a goth, you know, Ashley was more goth. And here Susan's more, you know, like Ralph Lauren, you know, so yeah, right. Like, so, you know, I mean, it would have been a lot easier if Ashley had more Ralph Lauren or Susan had more Marilyn Manson, you know, but I mean, you know, so I was like the balance in the middle, as was Debbie, her friend. We were more like the cushions, you know, that she could talk to and just cry through, and you know. But me as a gay woman, you know, I've been with my wife for 21 years now, so she understood, you know, that I understood her as her sister, and yet without judgment for Ashley, you know, as my niece, you know.
That was really, by the way, congratulations on 21 years. That's one thing
That's a cinch, not.
Humans are so complicated, aren't they? Oh my goodness.
My wife is listening too.
Well, we're glad to have you as well. I'm just trying to picture Susan as a goth right now, and I'm going back. I'm
No.
thinking Morticia hair,
Yeah.
very almost gray, white skin. That would be great. Oh, look at the black nails. That'd be
Make
fun.
her
Hold on,
cry.
get in there. Can't do it. It doesn't work. No, no, no. Well, we've heard from Susan and we've heard from Fern, even, and we've heard from Matt. But Manny, are you here? As I say, staring at you on this little thumbnail.
I am. Hello.
Why
Hi,
don't you
everyone.
introduce yourself?
Thanks for the great program. Thanks for doing this, Jacob. It's a great event. If I could just share a little bit. I had, as my daughter was a male, so she was 20 something in my mind. So I did a lot of activities with him as a boy, athletics. I mean, they're very athletic boys. And she is an athletic woman now, but back then, in the 20s, he was still a boy. So when he transitioned, it was a little hard for me to get the pronouns correct. It was hard because 20 some years of he and him, and I had some difficulties with Ashley over that. And she did correct me. She's a strong young lady, and corrected me to that. She, it's a she, and we have some issues in that, but. Luckily now, I think we really come to terms. We speak on the phone almost daily now. So we've been in touch, and I do know that she is she, it's a her, my daughter, and I made that clearly in my mind, and I've come to deal with that. But initially it was difficult because when you have a child, this is me as a father, when you have a child who grew up as a boy and participated in all kinds of activities, too many sports to mention because I was very athletic and I got both kids into everything. So a lot of activities, boy sports, hunting, all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to go into it. But a lot of activities. And then at 20, because I was not in the home at that point, when I was told, at 22, I am now a woman. And it was difficult for me. I mean, she's my daughter and my child, and I love her to death, and I always did. I love both my children tremendously, and I think we're pretty close. And that was never an issue, the love. But it was difficult, the transition and getting the change done quickly. I think I did better. Actually, wasn't so happy with that because I still will make errors and say he instead of she, or him, him instead of her. It was difficult. Just after so many years of using those pronouns, it was hard to switch right home. But I think I accomplished that with a lot of corrections from Ash, my daughter. And I think now today we have such a wonderful relationship. We read together. We speak a lot on the phone. We stay in touch, and we finally have a really good relationship. And but it's been a process. It has not been easy. It was not easy in the beginning. That was the hardest part. It is so much easier now because I think the whole family has accepted the situation, and Matt has been amazing being in the middle there, making everything work for us. He's been instrumental in being there and keeping us focused on the whole transgender. He's very wise of what's going on in the world and what's going on. He's always been there to talk to me and remind me and how to deal with it and understand the complexities of the relationships, the whole different thing. And, and I was just so bothered today with the whole transgender issue. Today in Arkansas, the Republican governor had to veto a law that they're not going to provide medication or medical treatment to transgenders. That just happened today in Arkansas, and the legislature is talking about vetoing, overriding the veto of the governor, so they will not provide medical care for transgender. That's horrible. That happened today, today's day and age. Even today in Arkansas, that happened. So we have a lot of concern, and I was a little concerned even about doing this program because I know there's so much out there, so much negativity, so much hatred, and I've seen it, in what I do in my profession. But I was a little concerned about doing this and exposing the family to all this because there are elements out there that can cause harm. So I give you credit for doing this, but there was still a little hesitation in me to expose the family to this because of the hatred that I see day to day, and even right now today in Arkansas and other states. So But I do thank you for doing this. I see that it's helpful, and I see all the comments that the folks watching today are giving, and I appreciate the support. It's needed. It's warm support. We need that, and I'm very grateful that you all are here. And a lot of folks came out to be with us this evening, and I appreciate that. It has been a journey, but I tell you that I have a daughter and have no misgivings. She's my child, for life, and a son, Matthew, and I'm very happy that they're here and they're healthy. And that's the most important thing. They're both safe and healthy in a very complex world right now, right? But thankfully they're safe and sound and healthy, and that's a tremendous something to be happy for. So we stay healthy. I appreciate taking the minutes, give me a minutes to say a few words, but I will tell you, and I'll be honest, it was not easy, but I think I come to terms with everything, and I did back then. I just didn't show it to my daughter often enough, but I think we're okay now, and I appreciate the time and for the program. Thanks so much for doing it. Thank you.
Manny, thank you for being strong enough to share something.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks
Definitely.
for having me.
My heart goes out to all parents of well, any child, really. Let me tell you, and now that I've taken in a couple of them unwittingly, although they're technically adults at 18. By the way, whose bright idea was it to say you're an adult at 18? Who did that? What idiot said, hey, you're 18, be an adult? I mean, really? That needed to change. That needs to go, and so does daylight savings time. Those two things need to be thrown out the window, because they do not mean that you are actually an adult at 18. Just to be very clear. Like, when you died at 30, I understand. Right now, let's make it like 24, okay? Let's just be clear. But in the meantime, I say that to say, you're right. It's everyone that is here. Thank you for your support, and thank you for being light. Thank you for being light. It is something that I have found as I have gone through my advocacy, and I try to understand, because you don't have to understand to be empathetic. You don't have to understand to be an ally. You just have to know that there's an injustice that needs to be addressed. And for so many, no one speaks up for them. And I'm going to paraphrase this because I'm going to do a horrible job if I actually try to quote it, but Martin Luther King Jr. had a saying that says, we will not die at the hands of those who kill us, but rather at the hands of those who sit on the sidelines and quietly watch. And we can let fear run our lives. And we can let what we think might happen dictate the choices we make. But then, if we're not willing to die for what we are living for, are we really alive? Yeah. Susan, you have come so far in your own journey and your own story, and you have come to recently realize another calling for yourself at this point in your life, being an advocate, not only for trans individuals, but for their families, and sharing your message of love and compassion, not only for your daughter and your son, but for yourself as well. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, pay more attention to the signs. Be kinder. Don't be so afraid. Transgender people, well, no one asks to be born the way that they're born. And transgender people really, really have a rough time of it. Transgender is the new gay. Like, gay is still not even a thing anymore. And it's the time now for transgender people to try and figure all that out. And what they're facing is extreme depression, dysphoria, anxiety. Self-harm is very prevalent. The suicide rates among the transgender community is highest as a demographic overall. My daughter, she tried suicide twice, and she lived to tell the tale. Her brother got her through a lot of that. And maybe if I had been less afraid and so self-absorbed and paid attention to the signs, maybe I could have prevented a lot of the hurt and trauma. But you know what? We're all a united family. The fact that her father and I are no longer married is irrelevant. We're the parents of these two kids, and we are united in our support and love of them, and for their safety. And see, Manny, you're not muted. Te oigo. Okay, now you are muted. Y no te oigo. That's so funny. So
I'm usually faster at that. I didn't see he was muted. I usually mute right after. My mistake. I'll take the blame there, Manny. It's my fault.
So we come together to care for these kids, and this is a matter of life or death for transgender people. It literally is. And it must be for them to go through these surgeries. My daughter's had 2 different surgeries. She had facial feminization surgery. She had genital reassignment surgery, vaginoplasty. She went through electrolysis and all sorts of other stuff. I mean, what she hasn't done, because it's incongruous what she sees of herself here with what she sees here in the mirror. And she looks and goes, ah! And I mean, we all look in the mirror some days and go, oh, I don't like what I see. But imagine every single moment of every single day in your entire life, that's how you feel. It would make you pretty anxious and depressed and dysphoric too. And when people aren't there to support you in it and they abandon you instead, what are the chances that you're going to survive that? Very small. And so we're here. The people, thank you for coming out and supporting me, because you're giving me strength and empowering me to remember that there's a reason why I have to do this. I just have to do this. That's it. I have to do this.
I want to take a moment to ask the audience if you are also, have you guys witnessed the change in Susan's energy from the beginning of this show until now, and how that has become, it's almost night and day from when we started an hour ago. Does anybody else recognize that? Just me? It can't just be me.
Christine, you can say it.
She leaned in midway in the hair. She just leaned in, and it's beautiful to see. Great job. Great job. Very proud of the family.
It's not easy. What you're doing, Susan, how you're trying to stand up for people who do not have allies. It's not easy to take on that burden, but you're taking something that most people discard and you're turning it into art. And I think that you need a round of applause. Everyone.
Love you, sweetie.
You too, honey. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Proud of you.
Good job, Susan.
Proud of you, Susan.
Yeah, you guys are all awesome. Thank you.
For those of you who,
And here's for Matt.
That's right. And you done good, Manny and Matt.
We love you, Susan.
and Manny and Fern, all of you are wonderful.
Stay strong and always be there for them, right? For her.
That's it. That's it. It's not about us. That's it. If people want to, if you know of people who want to reach out to us, they can visit our Facebook page, Trans Family Circle. They can go to our website, brand new. I just published it. It's very lightweight, but I just had to get it up in time for tonight. So, okay, it'll be a work in progress. It's transfamilycircle.org, and we can be emailed at info@transfamilycircle.org. There will be no telephone calling. I'll conduct Zoom calls if people want, but in order to protect my safety, my family's safety, and most particularly my daughter, I have to vet everybody, because as Manny said, there's a lot of hatred out in this world, and we never know who we're dealing with. So
I want to leave everyone with one thing that they can start thinking about, because I believe part of the way of emboldening individuals who are trans and trans allies is starting to change the conversation from, you like how I did that? From this is something they are born with in a certain way to something I've adopted. And it's been fairly recently that I've adopted it, mind you. And once I did, I became a lot happier. So I want everyone else's opinion on this. Maybe you can think of this way. When you're born, you kind of take for granted the color of your skin, the color of your hair, the color of your eyes, but we can decide to put on spray tan, or we can put in color contacts or bleach the hell out of our hair to make it look like whatever color we want it to be, right? And when we do those things, we are making decisions. You know what I mean? We're making decisions to make our hair look this way or paint our nails a certain color. We are making decisions to modify our body that we see ourselves and we want to reflect our image to the world as. But no one ever thinks about being accountable for their own gender, whether they are cis, meaning they identify with what they are born as, or whether they are not, or they're somewhere in between. When was the last time any of us took accountability for our gender? When have any of us actually decided to, I'm going to be male, I'm going to be female, I'm going to be other, I am not going to give a damn? And when did we ever start to own that for ourselves? Think about it for a moment. Every one of you think about it for a moment. When did you decide to own your own gender identity? Have you? Have you decided it? And now that you are thinking about it, do you like your decision? Would you like to change your decision? And would you like the permission to change it if you so choose? Even if you didn't do it, just to have the audacity to change it just because you could, to be accountable for your own identity down to your DNA. Now that, my friend, that's evolution. That is transcendent. And that is why trans is beautiful. So thank you, Susan. Thank you, Manny, Matthew, and Fern, and all of you here to support us as we change the conversation and slowly change the world. I'm Jacob Jennings with the Sherlock Holmes Foundation, and we will see you here next week when we continue to change the conversation.